So now we'll say the prayers to the spiritual master. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavansha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitansha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So yesterday we had last week we had ended with chapter 6 and covered half of chapter 7. I believe we had just covered the 9th item of sadhana bhakti, which was observing Ekadashi, and we were just starting the 10th item, or maybe I'd mentioned the 10th item of worshiping Tulsi. So these were the 10 things that should be done, that are very important, that are very effective in the practice of our devotional service. And number 10, I just mentioned it because I was running out of time at that time. So maybe I'll start with this one. So we covered the first 10, which were the positive items. And then today we'll cover the 10, or not exactly 10, because 19 then goes into the next chapter. But the next 8 items, which are items to be avoided in devotional service. So 10 is the last one of the items that should be done in devotional service. And remember, these are the most important ones. So it was observing Ekadashi, dealing with the material world only as far as necessary, residing in a sacred place, being prepared to give up anything for Krishna, inquiring from the spiritual master, following in the footsteps of the great acharyas, and then the first 3, which were obeying the orders of the spiritual master, becoming initiated by the spiritual master, and first and foremost, accepting the shelter of the bona fide spiritual master. So these were the first 9. As we can see, all of them are very important. And in that list of the most important 10, the 10th one is worshiping Tulsi. So worshiping Tulsi is glorified in all the scriptures. And it's so important that every single morning, Srila Prabhupada had us sing the prayers to Tulsi Maharani. There's so many prayers in the scriptures. There's so many, different great devotees of the Lord. But among all of them, Srila Prabhupada selected the worship of Tulsi and worshiping sacred trees like Tulsi, because it is so important in our devotion, in our bhakti. Every day we chant Yani Kani Chapapani Brahmahatyadikani Chatani Tani Pranashati Pradakshina Pade Pade. And what that verse is saying is that just by circumambulating Tulsi Maharani, just by circumambulating her, by going around her, one can attain all spiritual perfection. And even if one has killed a Brahmana, one may be forgiven of the offense of killing a Brahmana. Now, don't kill a Brahmana. That's not good at all. But the point is that if one has accidentally done so, or one has done so in ignorance, and the offense is very, very great for killing a Brahmana, then Tulsi Maharani's worship is so powerful that even such a sinful person can be rectified. And great, great devotees have been made in our movement by serving Tulsi Maharani. Some of Prabhupada's personal, you could say, very dear associates like Govinda Mataji, Govinda Dasi, she was worshipping Tulsi and therefore gaining great spiritual benefits. Some of our sannyasis in our movement have a very special attraction, very special connection with Tulsi Maharani. So her worship is especially potent, especially powerful. And particularly it's mentioned that we should chant while sitting in front of Tulsi Maharani, because when we chant sitting in front of Tulsi Maharani, then we get extra potency, extra mercy to chant purely. Because she is the association of a great devotee. Prabhupada describes in one place, she is silent association. So the association of the devotee can come in many forms. And one form is this silent association. And this is why it should not be underestimated, the importance of worshiping Tulsi, because she's always there and she's giving her grace. Like other devotees, they come and go in our home, but she's a devotee who's always there and she's giving us her grace. The translation for the Tulsi prayers is on the platform of Raganuga Bhakti. The song that we sing, it's actually Raganuga Bhakti. And so Tamal Krishna Maharaj mentioned how Srila Prabhupada has given us a process of sadhana that is aimed towards Raganuga, or a process of sadhana that also starts with Raganuga. The translation of the Tulsi prayers is, O Tulsi, beloved of Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire is to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. So she is Chintamani, whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. So it's saying that by worshipping Tulsi, we get residence in Vrindavan Dham. Now, who are we to ask such a benediction? Being a resident of Vrindavan Dham means being an associate of the Lord. Vrindavan Dham. I forgot. O Tulsi, beloved of Krishna. O Tulsi, beloved of Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire is to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in the pleasure grove of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but quickly wanted to add a point while you were saying about everything that you were saying about Tulsi Maharani. So it said that Tulsi Maharani also doesn't belong to the plant species. She directly descends from Goloka. Anything, Prabhu, you want to add about it, or you've heard about it? I've heard this several times from some devotees, senior devotees.
Yes. So basically, if we don't worship Tulsi, if we don't get Tulsi in the disciplic succession, first of all, where do you receive the Tulsi from? It has to be from a devotee It has to be in the disparate succession, so to say. Prabhupada Govinda Dasi, she distributed, or from Vrindavan Dham. And so it has to be the right Tulsi, and we have to worship Tulsi. Then she manifests herself in the plant form. But if we don't worship, then it's holy basil. It's not Tulsi. Just like you see sometimes in like homes of politicians in India, there's Tulsi growing there, and then with the cutter they're coming and mass cutting her leaves. So I once asked some senior devotees, like, is this Tulsi really? And then her leaves are also very thick. They're not, it doesn't feel like Tulsi. And they confirmed that unless you worship Tulsi, or unless she's in Vrindavan, or unless, her presence is very much like a deity, her presence will not be manifest in that. So we have the deity of Srila Prabhupada in our temple. So if we don't worship it, if it's in a storefront, it's a statue. But when you worship it, then Prabhupada is there. In the same way, the Tulsi plant is the form of Tulsi in this world, but she will manifest herself in that form if we worship her. So yeah, she's not a plant. She herself descends to this world. Yes. So I was finishing the translation. Whoever takes shelter of you has a wish fulfilled, bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also grant me residence in the pleasure grove of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I always behold the beautiful pastimes of Shri Radha and Krishna. So the devotee is saying, thus within my vision, I always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. By worshipping Tulsi, we can see the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a resident of the pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. So we are asking actually residence in that place, which is Raganuga Bhakti, asking residence in the Lord's pastimes, requesting to see the pastimes of the Lord is not Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti means rules and regulations. Getting up in the morning, doing our Mangal Arati, chanting our 16 rounds, offering our food. This is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Requesting the Lord for residence in Vrindavan Dham, requesting to see the pastimes of the Lord, this is at least Raganuga Bhakti, if not even higher stages of Bhakti. So how is it that we can ask this? Well, the aspirant, every day, this is why we're singing this, is so important. The aspirant is begging the Lord, is begging Tulsi Maharani, that by your mercy, may I one day be able to see the pastimes of the Lord. May I one day be able to reside in Vrindavan Dham. And how is that possible? It's possible by the mercy of the pure devotees, by the mercy of the devotee. Therefore, Tulsi Maharani can give that to us. Offense to the Vaishnavas is the foremost impediment in devotional service. One can positively guard against this offense by developing an attitude of firm respect towards any living entity connected to Krishna's service. These entities include banyan trees, tulsi, brahmanas, and cows. So we should vow in our mind the firm respect toward any. We should vow in our mind that we will always be respectful to every living entity, because then we can get connected very easily to Krishna's service. And especially to what to speak of human beings, even the plants and the animals, is being said, including banyan trees, tulsi, brahmanas, and cows. So here, trees, tulsi, brahmanas, and cows are all mentioned in the same list. But we should understand that tulsi, among all four of these things, of course, if the brahmana is a Vaishnava, that's different. If the cows are, Krishna's cows, it's a different thing. Banyan tree, if it's in Vrindavan, it's a different thing. But tulsi is foremost of course, like I said, all of these in relation to Krishna are equal. But especially these, the banyan trees, the tulsi, the brahmanas, and cows should be respected. So now we complete the first 10, which were the positive attributes, positive elements of sadhana bhakti. Now we will finish chapter 7 by seeing what to avoid. One should rigidly give up the company of non-devotees. So this, we were reading just this chapter yesterday, chapter 7, and Prabhupada quotes Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Asat Sanga Tyaga Ye Vaishnav Achar. That a Vaishnava is someone who gives up bad association. Until we are in association of worldly-minded people, the problem is we cannot absorb ourselves fully in Krishna consciousness. Even if we are in their association for, just for Krishna service, still that association affects us, may affect us, or reduces our experience of full absorption. Not to say that we should not go in their association for our service, but why is it that you see in our Vaishnava culture, in our Vaishnava acharyas, that people like Bharat Maharaj, who are, pure devotees of the Lord, who are, king simply to serve the Lord, why is it that at a certain point they left their kingdom and they went to the forest to exclusively devote their time and energy in service to Krishna? Why is that? That's the case because still, even though he was a pure devotee, when you're in touch with the kingdom and all these things, you don't get the opportunity to just think and meditate and chant about Krishna all day, to relish his pastimes. Why is it that Prabhupada says that every person at the age of 50 should become vanaprastha and devote themselves fully to Krishna consciousness? Because until and unless we're in the company of these non-devotees, we cannot really absorb ourselves. Now, for the service of the Lord, the devotee is even willing to go to the hellish planets, what to speak of associating with non-devotees. But even when the devotee associates with non-devotees, he really does not associate. He is just interacting with them for the service of the Lord. Prabhupada explains that association means sharing food, sharing your heart's desire, taking advice, sharing your feelings. So these things we don't do with the non-devotees. These things we do with the devotees, even if we're working outside with our business partners and things. We have no need to share our heart. We just have to be a good colleague, work with them and do our work. So therefore, even a devotee who's working outside, first of all, this is a point, he's not really associating because he's not, eating with them. He's not going to the bar with them. He's not doing those things which are not beneficial. Now, once in a while, we have to, for lunches and things, we have to, go required things. But even then, it's not association, because the heart and the mind and the faith is not in the non-devotees. The faith is in the devotees. So this is the most one of the most important things. We see that children that are going to have karmi friends and are going to karmi schools, they become affected by that non-devotee association. And this is why the Nectar devotion in this section tells that it is better to live in a cage with iron bars, or it is better to live with a tiger than to live with non-devotees. So even with children, we say that, well, okay, maybe they need to go to school or they need to go to college, but that should be just the for the purpose of the school and the college and for those interactions. But still, the devotees should not live. These devotee students should not live in dormitories or on campus or with other materialistic people. Because if you live with them, then you may be the very most strong devotee, but material nature is still stronger. So if we are giving ourselves to material nature, ultimately we will be defeated. If we live with them, we will be defeated. So we have to live outside. We have to um, Krishna consciousness can overpower Maya, but then we have to choose Krishna consciousness. If in any situation we can be perfectly Krishna conscious on our level, then what is the need of this principle? Then why is this principle even mentioned? It was enough for Rupa Goswami to mention that associate with devotees, right? Which he has done so many times, particularly in relation to the spiritual master. He could have just said, associate with the pure devotees, and then you will become a pure devotee. But why does he add the principle that you must give up the association of non-devotees? Because you may associate, we may go and associate every Sunday with devotees, but if we're living with non-devotees, how long can we last? And my personal experience is this, that, material things, desires were impossible to get over. And I just could not find any way. It's just like, there's no way. But just by associating and living with devotees, it happens. This is the power of association. So there's three types of non-devotees, Prabhupada explains. Three types of people we avoid. Atheists, who try to satisfy selfish desires by their own endeavors, who deny the existence of God. Mundane religionists, who try to satisfy selfish desires by God's blessings. So they are show bottle devotees. They come to the temple, but they come only to satisfy their own desires. Materialistic devotees are also not good association because they create material desires within us. Right? So if we are associating with a devotee who watches TV or goes out and eats in restaurants, then eventually we'll start doing that also. We'll be, eating onions and garlic pretty soon. Oh, it's okay, Prabhu. Some devotees say, well, maybe mushroom is okay. Onions and garlic are mentioned, but mushroom isn't mentioned. Or, it's okay to eat a pizza at Pizza Hut, and and in the same kitchen where pepperoni and beef is being cut and served. So we start to slip, and we do it drop by drop. And one day we're like, oh, I'm on the bottom of the mountain. So mundane religionists, mundane devotees, the Christians, friendly neighbor Christians who are so nice, they're very nice, but if they're materialists, then they're still materialists. If their primary endeavor, their primary meditation is how to satisfy their material selfish desires, and they're not concerned about the service of the Lord, then they're not good association for us or for our children. And number three, impersonalists. Don't associate with Mayavadis. Lord Chaitanya says, anyone who associates with Mayavadis loses his intelligence. They try to satisfy selfish desires by obtaining liberation. Up to the point of liberation, they're willing to go just to enjoy and become God. Number 12. So to conclude this thing, Rupa Goswami sets the standard. He says that it's better to live in a cage with iron bars, or it's better to live with a tiger than to associate with non-devotees. So we may think that, what will happen to my children if I don't send them to the dorm and to the university to live in the dorm? But we should understand that it is better that they live on the street than if they live in the dorm with materialists. That is what the scriptures are saying. It is better not to have a college degree than to sacrifice one's spirituality by living with non-devotees. And again, as I mentioned, this doesn't mean not studying. Prabhupada himself encouraged devotees to get education. But this means for the education, we give up all of our principles. In the dorm, what happens? There's meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, intoxication. What will a person learn? Only bad things. So number 12, one should not instruct a person who is not desirous of accepting devotional service. One should not instruct a person who is not desirous of accepting devotional service. This is very interesting because sometimes, especially to relatives, we try. I've also tried. And they literally do this picture that you see here. Like they do not want to listen. I remember one relative at a certain point in her life, she was just like, she didn't want to hear anything about spiritual life. Like completely, she just turned, she didn't turn away from Krishna. She was just not willing to know, because she was afraid to know about spiritual life, Krishna consciousness, because then what would happen is that she would feel guilty about her material life. And so the moment we would start speaking about spiritual life, she would if someone is speaking something, then you may you start mumbling, right? Something to stop them, like making a sound, something like that. She would literally start doing that. It was that, but now she's more open to hearing. Life changed, situation changed, and they're more open to hearing. So one should not instruct a person. So then how do you help them? And this is not Krishna, this is Rupa Goswami, a pure devotee writing. To such persons, you feed them Krishna prasadam. Maybe put on a tape if they're willing. Even that, sometimes they're not willing to hear kirtan. They're like, no, I'm going to hear my Bollywood songs, etc. So this is, you give them Krishna prasadam and keep trying. But we don't instruct them, because it makes them more offensive. It makes them more averse. And then we could be responsible for turning them away from Krishna. There's also good preaching and there's also negative preaching. And we can kind of generalize this principle for things in general also, that if we preach to someone who comes to the temple, but we preach to them in a way that they never want to come back. The first time they come, we start talking about how bad it is to eat meat and how sinful people are, and how we shouldn't have a girlfriend or boyfriend, and they do. And because of that, they don't ever come back. Then we can be responsible, because we are not being sensitive enough, where we are inhibiting another person's spiritual life. So yes. Next one should not be very enthusiastic about constructing costly temples. Now, some of you may be in yatras that are constructing temples, and you might think, my gosh, what is this? Rupa Goswami is saying, don't construct costly temples, and here we are working day and night to build a temple. What to do? So Prabhupada actually explains this in one lecture. It's very amazing. Prabhupada's lectures are so enlightening and deep. They actually show us, they illustrate so many points that we find in his books, and we may be confused, and he explains them in these lectures. So Prabhupada is sitting in a temple in one of his centers in the United States. And at that time, I don't remember which one it was, maybe New York or Los Angeles. This was like a few years after the movement started. Devotees had $100 in their bank accounts. The temples had $100 in their bank accounts. They were surviving just by distributing books, and from that the daily expenses were being done. So Prabhupada said that for Krishna, we will do anything. For Krishna, we will build a nice temple. For Krishna, we're not interested in costly homes and building houses and all these, but for Krishna, we can build his house. We can build the temple. He says, however, we will not build something. A devotee, what this principle means, that we will not build something that will cause so much anxiety that we will not be able to think of Krishna. So he says, we will build a temple for $10,000, something that we can maintain. But then the part that I distinctly remember, he says, but we will not build something, we should not build something that is $1 million, something that we cannot maintain, that's something that we have no sources for. So what is costly is different for different people. And that is the principle here. That is what he's saying here. For a multi-millionaire, for a great king, building a magnificent temple is not a costly temple, because for them it doesn't cost anything. In fact, this is why all the great kings, King Indradumna, he built Jagannath Puri, Maharaj Jai Singh, he built, I think, the Govind Dev Ji temple in Jaipur. All the great kings, even in recent times and previous times, built great temples. They're great Vaishnavas. So why did they do that? Because they had the resources. They could do it very easily. Sanatana Goswami himself built the Madan Mohan temple. But how did he build it? He didn't build it by day and night only being a money man. He built it by worshiping the Lord, by being an exemplary devotee of the Lord. And then sure enough, this man came on his boat. He had the desire, and he didn't build it with his own money, but then this great merchant came with a boat full of salt. And his salt boat got stuck in the Yamuna, in a sandbank, just in front of where Sanatana Goswami was sitting. And so then this merchant, he comes to Sanatana Goswami. People have told him that he's a great mystic and he lives in this area. And he can help you get your boat free. Because you have to understand, the salt is so valuable, but the boat is also very valuable. And if it's stuck there, he could lose everything. It could just be destroyed. Eventually, if it's stuck, the boat will get destroyed. And so he needed help. There's no machines at that time, nothing. He was about to incur a huge loss. And so he thought, well, let me ask some saints or sages nearby. So they all send him to Sanatana Goswami. And when he comes to Sanatana Goswami, then he says, Sadhu, if you can help me, then I will give you great wealth. And Sanatana Goswami says, I don't need any wealth. I won't take any wealth. But yes, if this becomes free by the mercy of Madan Mohan, then you can build a temple for Madan Mohan. Sure enough, when the man goes back to the boat is free. Madan Mohan releases it. So then he takes that boat, he goes to Delhi or wherever he's going, he sells the salt. And whatever he earns from that boat full of salt, which is a lot of money at that time, from that money, he constructs the Madan Mohan temple. So Sanatana Goswami was enthusiastic about being a devotee, being a very sincere devotee. And his enthusiasm for being a devotee made the enthusiasm of building the temple. But it wasn't the other way around. It wasn't that he was trying to build a costly temple for its ego, or just to build a costly temple, and he was a devotee second. He was devotee number one, and that's the thing. So we should build temples. We should do so, but based upon our capacity and based upon the strength of our devotion, and not in place of our devotion to Krishna. And that's why we see in ISKCON, our big communities, they're building big temples because there's so many resources, there's so many people, and they need to be engaged in Krishna service. And Prabhupada specifically told us that we should engage people. By having them construct the temple, we are engaging them in the Krishna service. Because otherwise, these rich people won't do any service. And what will they do? They will come and wash pots. Like we have here in Naperville, building a temple, and one man is given like $500,000. Just one man, cash, 500,000. Now this man, he won't come and wash pots in the temple. He won't even come and listen to the lecture. He won't, chant a round on his beads. But he has money. He's willing to give his money. And by giving that $500,000, he's getting purified. So if we have a big enough community, it's not difficult because the resources are available. And so we can do it. But if we had a small community and we tried to do it, that may be considered not so favorable, because then our spiritual life will be compromised. Number 14, just like we shouldn't be very enthusiastic about building big temples for the sake of building them. Similarly, one should not be very enthusiastic to read too many books. Oh no, we're taking Bhakti Shastri. Why are we reading these books? No, one should not try to read too many books, nor should one develop the idea of earning his livelihood by lecturing on or professionally reciting Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. So the knowledge industry can be a very egotistical industry. I know this. I'm the expert in this. And what Rupa Goswami is saying, that if we want to make advancement in spiritual life, if we actually want to advance in spiritual life, we have to give up that ambition. Our only ambition has to be that I want to be a devotee of the Lord, that I want to please Krishna and the spiritual master. So the books that we are reading are the essential books, you can be assured. But the books, in addition to that, one has to be selective. Is this worth my time? I'm reading a book about, someone may say, I'm reading a book on how to solve puzzles. But even if you do, what is the use? Or I'm reading a book on astrology. So this is a Vedic one, Surya Siddhanta. But if you do, are you feeling love for Krishna after reading it? Are you becoming closer to Krishna? Now, if for our livelihood, we need to read it and become an astrologer and earn our livelihood this way, that's okay. We all have to do that. But we should not think that just because we read a Vedic scripture, it's a spiritual exercise. We have to see what is the purpose. If the spiritual master is telling us to help him, maybe serve him, distribute books, but we say, no, I'm going to read, the Katha Upanishad, then that is against the principle of devotional service. The activities themselves are not forbidden, for even the author, Srila Rupa Goswami, had disciples, constructed fancy temples, and read and wrote many books. Rather, the motives of pride and prestige linked with these activities must be rejected. So reading too many books means we're reading it for our pride. That's the only reason we'll read too many books, because we want to impress. Otherwise, we'll just read the books that we need to do our service or to enrich our spiritual life. But too many books means when we're reading for our pride. So when we have pride, we'll read too many books. Building too big of a temple may be for our pride, to show everyone. So those are being rejected. One should not be neglectful in ordinary dealings. So this is like Nectar Devotion covers everything. It's such an amazing book. This is why the law book of Krishna consciousness, right? It might be that, you sometimes see devotees coming to the temple, and once they're at the temple, they just, they get this, we call it PDS, pure devotee syndrome, PDS, pure devotee syndrome. And they stop to just care about people, care about it, how to deal with people. And this is not a sign of advancement, but rather this is a fault. Why we're not dealing with people nicely, why we are leaving things a mess, why are we, not being considerate of other person's feelings. One should not be neglectful of that. Such a nice slide here. Say please and thank you. Be polite. Raise your hand. Follow rules. Share with others. Take turns. Make a line. So a devotee is also a gentleman, Prabhupada says. He's the best gentleman. So Prabhupada never neglected any duties. He was also very aware of the circumstance. He was aware, like, if a disciple came with his Western parents, American parents, and they're a little uptight, he wouldn't expect them to offer obeisances in front of him, because he knew their level. The disciple, when the parents are not there, had to. But at that time, it's okay. The exchange is important. Making them, open up, warm up to Krishna consciousness is important. It's not important to be fanatical at that time. Same thing like we were talking about new people, right? Yes, of course, we have to make them into humble devotees who offer their obeisances. But that's not important in their first meeting. What's important is that they should be attracted to coming again. So a devotee doesn't act like a fool. A devotee acts like a gentleman. Ordinary dealings especially refers to financial transactions, which have the peculiar ability to evoke a mood of cheating and miserliness that weakens the selfless foundation of sadhana bhakti. So especially we should be very conscious in terms of our dealings concerning money with other devotees. Because if we don't, then we ruin the relationship, and then it becomes actually, why is this directly an important principle of bhakti? Because if we don't do it, we tend to lose our opportunity to associate with them. There's recently one case in India where one devotee, he cheated the temple, he took away money, and it was very embarrassing for the family of that devotee. And as a result of that, he actually cheated the devotees at the temple. He took their money. As a result of that, the family couldn't really come to the temple. They had no face to show. Even though it wasn't their fault, there was a different family member who had done it. But because they were connected with it and they knew both sides, they got stuck in this, really awkward situation. And the feelings got strained enough where they just couldn't come. In the same way, another devotee, he invested in something, and genuinely he was thinking this is a very good business plan, and he was able to convince other devotees to also invest in that. So like 5 other devotees gave 10,000 each, and they all invested in something and raised 70,000 and put it into a certain, business plan. And as life happens, it all failed, and everyone lost money. There's nothing illegal, nothing wrong about it, but everyone lost money. It turned out to be the wrong investment. And then as a result of that, that devotee who asked money from all these devotees, he had no face to show. And his sweet association with the devotees, his lifeline of association with devotees was compromised. He couldn't really associate with them. So therefore, in our ordinary dealing concerning money, especially, we should be very careful not to engage in those things or do anything wrong in those things. In general, it's best not to get financially involved with other devotees. It's better to keep the financial side separate, keep it, not to make material arrangements and material plans with devotees. Because if devotees start to, unless it's a devotional business, like a business like Bhakti Charu Maharaj started of altars and bead bags, or a temple gift shop. But if devotees get involved in business together, then the conflicts that occur in the business will affect their spiritual life. And so they end up losing both. They'll lose the business, but they'll also lose their spiritual life. If you do business with other materialists, you may lose the business, but you'll still have the devotees for refuge. Now, even if we, end up making a mistake with devotees, real devotees are very forgiving. So they'll accept us back, but it will waste time. So generally speaking, it's not good to get materially involved. It's not good to make the spiritual relationship between devotees into a material transaction, a material association. One should not be under the spell of lamentation in loss or jubilation in gain. So one should not be under the spell of lamentation in loss or jubilation in gain. So it's very important, very, very important that not to lament too much. Lamentation is in the mode of ignorance. So if we're lamenting, oh, Prabhu, Prabhu, what can I do? My life is so bad. Oh, Prabhu, my job is bad. That's why I can't serve. That's why I can't chant. Oh, Prabhu, my back is hurting. Oh, Prabhu, I have a cold today. That's why I can't do. Then in that lamentation, we will just waste away our spiritual life. Lamentation, Krishna says, in the mode of ignorance. Why should a devotee lament? If there's an unfortunate circumstance, the devotee becomes more determined to serve Krishna. Like Bhagavad Gita says, unaffected in happiness or distress. And one should not be overly enthusiastic, happy when things are good, because it's all in the realm of the material world. That means we're taking this material world too seriously. Because of that jubilation, we may become less cautious in our spiritual life. So we should not become overly jubilant. One who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, who neither rejoices nor grieves, who neither laments nor desires, who is equipoised in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. Krishna is saying. So all devotees are dear, but a devotee who is equipoised, a devotee who is, who has some emotional steadiness, who's equipoised, who's not, who knows how to control their emotions and be steady, realizing this is all the purview of the material world, and realizing that in the mode of goodness, you can solve problems more easily than in the modes of passion and ignorance. Such a devotee is very dear to Krishna. Because such a devotee is acting exemplary, is acting in an exemplary way in this material world, and is preaching by his example. Now, we oftentimes say that those who worship the demigods are avidipurvakam, they're less intelligent, small-minded. The Bhagavatam also describes how the demigods have ghastly faces, compared to the lotus face of Krishna. However, the demigods, and sometimes also people like devotees, when they read the Bhagavatam, just recently they're doing that, they would criticize Indra. Oh my gosh, this Indra, he's like, so lusty and this and that. We should not disrespect the demigods, because the demigods are in those positions because they have served the Lord. They've served the Lord so nicely. That is their quality. So we have to respect them. We are worshiping the Lord, but we still respect them, because then the demigods who are devotees of Krishna, they will help us. As other devotees help other devotees, they will help us in our spiritual advancement. And finally, one should not give unnecessary trouble to any living entity. Such a nice one. One should not give unnecessary trouble to any living entity. One has to learn to accept all living entities, and also be a little self-sufficient. We have to be responsible for our life, not simply depending on the temple, depending on other devotees, depending, or troubling other devotees in everything because we want some attention, troubling, or or wanting to kick out a devotee from a community, because we don't like them. These things are very bad. Big reaction for them. One time I was in India and I was serving my Guru Maharaj, and I was not exactly, I was kind of serving, but also visiting. So I was also a visitor. I wasn't like long-term. And Guru Maharaj came back to Delhi, and we all came back, and I didn't think about booking myself a room. I just thought, oh, stay somewhere, make an arrangement. And then one of these sannyasis there, he lightly chastised me, and he said, you should make arrangements for yourself. Why are you giving the stress to other devotees to make arrangements for you? I didn't make arrangements because I thought someone else will make the arrangement. Or, I'm serving Maharaj, so I can just sleep in some room. But why give someone? Similarly, another time I was in India, and when you go to India, you take heavy luggage. So I was taking my luggage, and this is when I was very young. I was like 13, 14, and we were traveling with Ganapati Swami. And I couldn't take my luggage. I couldn't pick it up. It was just one suitcase, but because I was small, I couldn't lift it. And so some devotees immediately came and helped me and took my suitcase and lifted it for me and took it. And at that point, Ganapati Swami, he chastised me. He said, why are you letting other devotees take your suitcase? I said, well, I can't lift it. He said, you should only pack that much that you can lift yourself. Because if you cannot lift it, you're giving trouble to other devotees for your own service. So we shouldn't give any unnecessary trouble to living entities. And the best example of that, the most important, is that the worst trouble we can give another living entity is to kill them for our food, right? That's unnecessary. Food is available everywhere. We can get a mango, we can get a banana, we can get a potato from the ground. Why should people kill cows and kill animals just for their food? That is called giving unnecessary trouble to other living entities. And that is the end of chapter 7. Prabhus, I need to end today at this time. There's a conference at 8 o'clock. My Guru Maharaj, as you know, is a little sick right now. He's in Delhi and he's recovering, but he was not well. So for that, I have a it's like a meeting at 8 o'clock, which is in 2 minutes. So I won't take any questions. This is chapter 7. I'll post the homework for chapter 7. So please keep reading, and we'll meet next week, and we'll do chapter 8 next week. Shri Rupa Goswami ki jai.
Jai.
Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Jai Jai.
Thank you, Babu.